Thank you for tuning in to The Truth with Trinity, and I am your host, Trinity. So, without further ado, I'd like to jump into this episode's topic, which is Simone Biles, the heart of a champion. I wanted to make a small disclaimer at first. The people that I'm describing and discussing, I don't know them personally. This is just, like a hypothesis, estimated guess, observation, from my personal point of view. And, about a week ago, she had some troubles, whether it was mental, whether it was physical ailments, that, she felt like she couldn't perform. I was a little bit disappointed because, although America, and of course there was, some Caucasians really coming down on her, just people from all sorts of walks of life, Americans felt disappointed because she's the, captain of the team. I was highly disappointed, and I don't know the brother's name, but some type of newscaster or anchor or something like that, making some negative comments about her. And everyone has the right to their own opinion, but I really feel like white America uses that at times, to put a black person up there saying something negative about a black person, so that they can slickly disguise their disdainful remarks to say, "Hey, a black person said something negative." So, as a white person saying something negative, it won't matter as much because they can always point to something that a black person said negatively about their own race of people. And I want to start off by saying that, America holds a history of profiting off of black women and men's talents, inventions, and skill, both mentally and physically. Like, for example, a certain slave may be excellent in playing the fiddle, so then he becomes known as the fiddler, as if he is nothing more than the object that produces music. Or the slave that fights roosters against each other. So if there's two roosters that's fighting, there's a slave that fights roosters. Okay, so then that particular slave is known as the rooster fighter. Okay, and therefore, many slaveholders made bets, deals, and money amongst other slaveholders based off of the skills their slave possessed. Okay, so they pretty much dehumanized them, and reduced them to only what they could provide for the slaveholder. And looking at their slave more like a Pokemon rather than a human that has feelings, emotions, and at times gets tired or weary, because none of that matters as long as the slave could provide two things for the slave master. Or, excuse me, I like to say slave holder. I don't like to say slave master, but slave holder. And those two things are money, and more prestige. So as long as the slave could provide that for the slaveholder, it didn't matter how tired they were, how thirsty, or any of that, just as long as they could keep producing that money for that slaveholder, okay? Now, I'd like to talk about a certain female gymnast. She is most certainly a household name. She is articulate, intelligent, she's beautiful, and really lights up the floor with her unique athletic abilities. And she's not just about her athletic abilities. I think she's a wonderful role model for all young ladies, regardless of nationality, but certainly someone that young African American little girls can look up to. So she's not just athletics; she's brains and beauty with that. So she has all three. And she opted out of some of the competitive exercises to take time out for her health, whether that referred to her mental or physical health. She felt like, hey, I need to take a time out. Okay. And although much is required of a captain, so she's the captain, much of which the average everyday civilian like you or I might not be aware of in regards to what it takes or how much pressure is placed upon them. But even from the outside looking in, I can honestly say, so personally, number one, okay, athletes like Simone Biles, Gabby Douglas, Jackie Joyner Kersey, Surrey Bonelli, and she's a black ice skater. She was the only one that was known in history to do a backflip on the ice and landing on one leg. Okay, Jackie Robinson, the baseball player, Dominique Dawson, Okay, and not to mention the first Black Marines, and then the Tuskegee Airmen, and the list can go on, where Black men and women have had to endure both mental and physical abuse at times just to get a chance on a particular team or list. Okay, meanwhile, a Caucasian may not have been half as skilled or talented, but based off of color, they were approved or made the team, some of them with little to no hard work. Some of the times the captains or officers knew that they cheated, and just so they wouldn't have to let a Black person on, they would pick them off of their color based off of the Black person working triple as hard. Okay. And while sisters like Simone, okay, had to enter into an arena that only catered to and accepted girls who were white, pale, with blonde hair. Now I'm not sure if this is the case. So I'm not sure if she, needed to take time out because of things that were going on the floor or in her personal life. But I'm just saying though, as far as, America's response and just the things that, Black people, men and women, have had to go through. Okay. But if you have experienced even what I have personally, at the job, sometimes being in arenas where or workplaces where there's only Caucasians, and how the atmosphere shifts and it changes when you walk on the scene, and just some of the comments and little things, and just the way they act, which makes can make you feel uncomfortable, especially if you're the only Black in the room and you have no one else to relate to. It can be tough, but God forbid at the level and height of star athletes. Okay, so I don't know about that too much. Maybe some of you all do that are listening, but let's look at some of the things and situations that Black people have had to endure just to be on the team to pave the way for the next generation. So, some of our men and women, even the ones that I haven't listed, what they've went through just to pave the way for you and I and our children. Okay, number one, they had to perform 5 to 10 times as harder or longer than a white competitor or soldier who only had to do a fraction just to pass. Okay. And I think sometimes, they had us working so hard, doing extra abilities and things, because they were afraid to let us on these teams, because they knew once we were on those teams, that they would have to step up their game to meet up to our level. Okay. Number two, food poisoning or tampering with personal products, in the locker rooms, eating food and stuff. Who knows if they tried to put little things in their food, urine, feces, tried to, put, certain poisonous things in your toothpaste, or, who knows, when you're dealing with people who don't like you and fear you being in the same room or on the same team as you, who knows what some of the athletes have had to go through in the past, or some of the soldiers and the armed forces before they were letting Black people, on, and what they still may go through. Okay, in certain sectors. Number three, negative and racist, condescending remarks Black men and women have had to ignore. But if a Black person made those comments or tried to defend themselves against those racist comments, then they became automatically disqualified. And sometimes, a lot of times, a lot of, white people through history, they would make those comments, and it still happens even now. They play that game that they play, not all of them, but, some of them. And, even people can play that with each other, even in the same race, but we're talking about race right here. A lot of times they did, the victim game. They're the perpetrator, but they're playing the victim, and because they're white, they can say, hey, they're making all sorts of comments, and then if you try to defend yourself and say something back, then it's, oh, teacher, look at this Black angry person, just to get you disqualified from the team. So a lot of things that our Black people have had to ignore and endure. Number four, physical violence and assault at times. How many times have our Black brothers and sisters had to ignore someone actually putting their hands on them just to stay on the team, just to make a way, for our future generations. How evil and wicked that is, that some people, do that. Would hit someone, and then you can't do anything back because you're going to be disqualified, all because of the color of their skin. They get to stay on the team and do whatever. Okay, number five, and some sexual assault. Okay, that some of our, especially sisters, have had to go through, just to be able to become a part of the team. And we can argue that not every white person rejected other races on their teams. And that is true. I'm sure there are some white people that, chose to speak up or be the first friend of that black person on the team, or, so I'm not saying all white people are the same or all black people are the same for that matter. But the truth is that majority of them did and still hate the ideal of giving fair scoring points for athleticism. So even with the competitions and stuff, a lot of our brothers and sisters have had to deal with points being deducted, and things of that nature, are not getting as high of points, even while performing even higher than some of the white um, competitors because of the color of their skin. Just the Olympics and people's just still not being willing to give them their props and always having something negative to say. And I understand it's a highly critical sport and you're at the elite level, so you have to be next to perfect, but just the racial undertones that are given in a lot of these situations. A lot of white people are not willing to swim or share locker rooms with other nationalities. The list could go on. So when America became disappointed that an elite, world most decorated gymnast of all times, holding 32 world medals, I believe, with more than half of them being gold and silver, I question America. And before I throw my questions out there, some people said, she just didn't want to fail. She just didn't want to get less than gold, so she quit it. But I beg to differ because, this is a gymnast that not only has gold and silver, but she does have some bronze. So she's not afraid to have all three types of metals. She has all three, mostly gold and silver. I think there was actually a problem, which I want to get to in a minute. And, that's why they have co-captains. Okay, that's why they have co-captains on the team. And what's wrong with the co-captain, sharing some of that spotlight? Sometimes there's nothing wrong with that. It all doesn't have to fall on her shoulders. So now I question America. When a white girl or a man says they are in pain, distress, or mental duress, they are quickly taken seriously. Okay. Why must Simone Biles' pain be any different? Okay. So when, you know, even in court cases, when white people, when they scream out that they're not guilty, that they had a mental problem, they'll put them under psych evaluation to rule out any mental illness and try to place it on that. Okay, but when a black person says that, they say, "Oh no, honey, you knew exactly what your black butt was doing." Okay, you don't get to yell mental, as if we don't have mental problems, especially the main ones in this country under white oppression at times. So the white girl yells out, "My ankle's in pain," or "I'm feeling depressed," and everyone's oh. But Simone Biles and sisters like her come out and say, "Hey, I've got an issue going on." And now it's, oh, she's being lazy, she's this, she's that. She just doesn't want to perform. All these negative things that they have to say about her, and quickly dismiss all the other gold medals and pride that she's brought to America. I think that's some of the racism that still needs to really be solved in this country. And I want to say that, Simone, she isn't a robot or a workhorse, but a young woman who has brought much pride to American gymnastics and America overall. Number two, like I said before, isn't that why they have co-captains and others on a team that can carry on when something happens to the captain, okay? And they're acting like she does this all the time. This is like a once in a lifetime. I've never heard of her, having to opt out. This is just one time. I understand it's a big, every 4 year competition, but still, that's why they have co-captains, okay? Yet they made it seem as if Simone purposely opted out rather than it being a prudent move for the rest of the team. After all, she isn't your jumper, she's not your flipper, and she's not your hopper or leaper. Okay? She's a beautiful young black woman, and she has her own thoughts and feelings, okay? She's not an object. Yet a young lady, so she's not any of those things. She's not a jumper, flipper, or hopper, but she's a young lady that if she never did another cartwheel for the American team, would be more and have done more than many would have done in their lifetime or 2 to 3 lifetimes. Okay. That pretty much wraps up this segment. Let me know what you think about it in the comments section. You can contact me if you have any questions or suggestions at thetruthwithtrinity.com. You can also listen to my podcast on YouTube, Spotify, and Anchor. And always remember, if you can't tell the truth with anyone else, you can with Trinity. Till next time, take care.